Hello guys, now we are going to talk about methods in Java. So a method is simply a block of code that performs something particular. For example, when we were seeing how to use array list, we had various methods from the array list class, like a method to remove an element from the array list. So what is happening is that when we write maybe the name of the array list and then dot remove and specify the element to be removed from that array list, there is actually a sequence of lines of code in the background that have been written in order to perform that operation of moving the elements to the array list. But now with our own methods, our own custom methods, which we are going to be creating ourselves, we are going to be the ones writing the actual logic that is in the background of the method. So what is the use of methods in our program? We may use methods to perform specific operations in our program and then simply call these methods to execute these specific operations which they have been designed to perform when we need them. An advantage of using methods also is that they are reusable, meaning that once you declare or define a method, you can use it as many times as you want in your program. Now, as you can already see within this our Java program, this is just the basic structure of a very basic program in Java, but this already contains a method because within our quick Java class, we already have this method which is the main method. So this main method is the method that contains the body of our program, and everything within the main method is what is going to be compiled and executed by our IDE. But we can also create our own methods within this same program. The only difference is when we want to create a method, we will have to actually create the method out of this main method because you cannot have one method within another one. So if we want to create a new method, we are going to go out of the main method and we create it out of this main method, but it should still be within the quick Java class. Notice that these yellow curly braces represent the class while the purple ones represent the main method. Now I'm going to create my own method, and the method I want to create is going to be a method that compares two integer numbers, and then returns the maximum of these numbers. So to get started creating the method, I will write public static. Notice that it begins same as our main method also. So public static, and then after that I will write the data type or the return type of the method. The return type is simply the data type of the value which is going to be returned from our method. So let me finish the method, and at the end you will understand better what this return type is. So for this example, my return type is going to be int because the value I'm going to be returning will be an integer. And the name of the method, now this is where we write the name of the method. The name of the method is going to be find max, which simply means find the maximum. And now I will follow this by a set of parentheses. Within the parentheses, now I will write or specify the parameters of my method. The parameters of the method are simply values which will be required when calling the method, and these required values are going to be used within the method to perform the given operation which we want to perform. So my parameters are going to be two integer values. One is going to be named A and the other one will be called B. And by the time you finish this small example, you will understand everything better, so just be patient. So what I want to perform in this method is to find the maximum of two values. These two values are our two parameters which we have specified at the method declaration. So I'm going to use a ternary operator in order to compare these two values and return the max. I will store the max in an integer variable called max. So I will say int max. And then since I want to use a ternary operator to compare these two values, I will simply write my parentheses and then the condition is A greater than B. If this is true, I'm going to return A. If not, I will return B. So max is going to compare A and B. If A is greater than B, then the value of max is going to be the value of A. But if A is not greater than B, max will be B. I already did a video on ternary operators. You can go back and check that video if you don't understand what is going on here. I promise with that video, you will understand ternary operators very well, but that is not the main aim of this video. So we are going to return the max now. You can also use if-else statements to compare A and B if you want. So max is an integer because its data type was int and we are returning max. So this is what guides us to determine the return type of our method. Since we are returning max, which is an integer value, it means the return type of the method is supposed to be specified as int. If you were returning a variable that is, or a value that is a string, the return type of our method would also be string. But in order to achieve what we want in this given example, we are supposed to return an integer value. Now we have declared our method, and if we try to run the program, let me save this and then I will try to run this program. We see that we don't have anything returned in our result. This is because we have just declared a method but we have not called it. Now every custom method which we declare or create in our program must be called within the main method. As I said earlier, the main method is what stores the code that is going to be compiled and executed by the IDE or compiler. So when we have declared this method and initialized or done everything we want with the method, we are supposed to call it for it to have an effect. So in order to call the method, I'm going to initialize a set of variables, integer variables. One is going to be num1, which will be set to 2, and I will have num2 equal to 3. I just prefer giving a bit of space. Okay, now we are going to compare num1 and num2 to see which one has a greater value. So I can simply compare num1 and num2 if I want. I will say result to store the value of the result, and then I'm going to also compare num1 greater than num2. So here I'm comparing num1 and num2. Whichever one is greater is going to be stored in our variable called result, and then here below, on the line below, I will simply print the value of result. Now let's try to run our program again. So we see result is 3 because after comparing these two values, num1 equal to 2 and num2 equal to 3, num2 which has the value 3 was just be greater than num1 which has the value 2. And here we have our expected output. Now we have the expected result, but this is not what we want to do because by doing this, we have not actually made use of our method which we declared, which we created called findMax. We have written the logic by ourselves a second time again, and this is what methods try to avoid. They try to avoid unnecessary repetitions. Like here, we already have our method which compares two values, and then it is going to return the maximum of these two values. So it's unnecessary to compare our two numbers here again. So I'm going to cancel all of this and replace it by our method. Now we have result. Instead of writing the comparison of num1 and num2 again, I am simply going to call our findMax method by writing the method name findMax and then followed by my set of parentheses. Now I'm going to pass the two values which I want to compare, which are num1 and then num2. So you see that num1 and num2 are our two values which we are going to pass, and the values of num1 and num2 are going to be the values which will replace this int a and int b, which we specified as parameters for our method. But when we specify num1 and num2, when calling the method, they are now called arguments, not parameters. So parameters are what we specify when declaring the method, while arguments are the actual values that are going to replace the parameters when we call the function or when we call the method. So you can see that as I already defined my method below here, I have just called the method. I don't need to write the same code which I already wrote to compare the two values. And then I'm storing the result. So this marks which is returned from our method is what is going to be stored in this variable result, and then we are going to now print result. Now let's run the program again, and you see that we will have the same output. So you see the max is still returned as 3. Now you can see that within our find max method, when we were declaring the method, we specified the return type as int, whereas with our main method, the return type is void. So void is a return type that we use when we are not returning anything from our method. So let me show you how we can use this. I'm going to change the return type of this our find max method to void. This means when you have a method and its return type is void, it means you cannot return any value from that method. So this line return max is going to become an invalid line. Let's try to run the program like this, and we see that it is going to give an error. You see that we have received an error because we are trying to return max, whereas the return type of the method is set to void. So usually when you are using a method of return type void, meaning you are not returning any value from the method, what you usually do most of the time is that we can just print the result of this method directly within the method instead of returning it. So I will replace this with a print statement, and then instead of returning the max, I will instead just print the max directly from within our method. So I am now saying system.out.println max. So we are printing the max, and then within our main method now, or the body of the program, we will have to change some things. Like here, we had to first declare this integer variable called result in order to store the value which was being returned by the find max method. So we are going to now change this to, since we are not returning any value from our method again, it means we will have to cancel this because nothing is being returned from the method and being stored in the result variable. And we will also cancel this line printing the value of result. Now this time around, when we simply call find max and then we pass the arguments num1 and num2, it is simply going to print the maximum value at once instead of first storing it within a variable and printing the variable laterwards. So let's save this and try to check the output. So we see we have just printed the max as 3. Now I'm going to modify our method a bit. I want to make the message here to be a little more explicit. I will say the greater value is, and then before printing max. Now we can see the greater value is 3. That message is a bit more comprehensive. Now we are going to see where the beauty of using methods lies. As you can see, we don't even need to declare these two variables, and before using them, if you want, we can just specify the values which we want to compare here. I will just say 2 and 3 without needing to store them in num1 and num2 first. Now let's say if you want to find the max between two values, but we want to repeat that many times, so I will say I can reuse this same method find max as many times as I want, so long as I've already declared it, or so long as I've already created it once in the program. I've already written all the logic for comparing the two values and then displaying the maximum. I can simply call this as many times I want within my main method now. So I'm going to simply change the values. This time I'll compare 1 and 3. Now I will compare 210 with 84. Then I will compare 1034 with 987, and then I will compare 24 with 10. So you can see I have called this method 5 different times within the main method. This is what we mean by method reusability. I have just created the method once, but I can reuse it as many times as I want within my main method. You can imagine if I did not write this logic for comparing and displaying the max within a method. For each of these different comparisons, I will need to write this ternary operator and then with the message printing the maximum value every time. So for these 5 times I've called the method, I would have written all the body of this find max method for all this number of times. But since I decided to create a method and put all this within the method, I can simply now call it by just writing the method name, and then I can pass different parameter sets or different argument sets at every time of calling the method. So this is the advantage of using method, permits code reusability. Now somebody trying to find the max of these two numbers just needs to write find max and specify the two numbers which he wants to compare without knowing what is happening in the background. Even without knowing that in order to return this max, we had to first maybe compare the two values and then before printing the maximum value laterwards. Now let's save the program and we are going to run it one last time. So we see all our different results are displayed as expected. This is how to use methods in Java.